In this video, I'm going to show you how to make a leather and wood lanyard. Let's build that. Cut 2 strips of leather about 6 inches long and 22 millimeters wide. I chose that dimension because it worked well with the size of snap I was using. I used a template to trace a circle in the end of my leather strip and used this as a guide to cut one radius. Burnished it with a lighter because it's too flimsy to use a burnishing tool and it gives you a clean look. Punch a hole in the radius center, fold that over a split ring, and mark another hole through your previous one, and you can punch that out. These 2 holes will be used to attach your snap bottom, which will also hold your split ring in. When you get your snaps, you should get a set tool. Just take your time and lightly hammer it until it's flush enough so that there's no movement, but you don't want to go crazy and crush your bottom. This creates the bottom half of your lanyard. Now we're going to take the other strip and we're going to punch another hole for the top snap. When you put your top snap on, just make sure that the top is on the side of the leather that you want to be facing out, and set that as well. You can snap these together and that creates your finished lanyard piece. Trim these up so that they're the same length, and I just used a little bit of super glue to tack the 2 ends together so it was easy to use. I cut a strip of wood veneer slightly bigger than 22 millimeters, and this wood will be used to make the decorative end for your lanyard. Your cuts don't have to be perfect because you're going to be trimming it later anyways. My leather is 2 millimeters thick and the wood is roughly half a millimeter, so I'm going to need to cut 4 little strips to make up the 2 millimeter thickness. And since I'm using 4, I decided to cut 8 more bigger strips for the top and bottom of my decorative end piece. So I have 8 big strips and 4 little strips, and using super glue, here, as you can see, the 4 strips are just over 2 millimeters, so that should be thick enough to fit your lanyard in. I used some super glue and I glued the 4 strips together, the 4 little strips together, and just clamped them till they dry. Then I used the same super glue and glued 4 of each of the bigger pieces together to make 2 separate blocks of wood, 4 strips per piece, and just clamped those until they dried as well. And these will make up the 3 pieces for your decorative end. Once they're all dry, you take the little one and you sand one end perfectly flush so that it's clean, because you won't be able to sand it later easily. Once that's sanded smooth, you can apply some glue to both sides of that little piece, and you're going to put that inside the 2 bigger pieces, and I clamped it. Once that's dry, you can use a razor blade and some sandpaper and a sanding disc and all kinds of stuff. Just work the shape and get it down to a 22 by 22 millimeter square, if that's the measurement you went with. You want to make this block as square as your leather is wide. And there's the finished piece. You can see that center section on the end and the 2 squares on top. To put these pieces onto the leather, I'm using these Chicago screws or thread and post screws. So I drilled a hole the same size as the post right through the center of my wood piece, and you can see it. I picked a post that was slightly longer than I thought my project would be, so I'm just marking where it's flush. I'm going to use a file and I'm going to just take down that material because I don't want it to crush the wood, because I don't want to break it. So I filed it down and then I just sanded it smooth to get it pretty much the same thickness as the wood piece. Now you can slip your leather in and you can mark through the hole where the leather needs to be punched out. So I punched that hole, and since I didn't go all the way through the leather, I just added some super glue, and this will stiffen up your leather and keep it pretty much locked into that post. We're going to glue it all in later. The post is really just for decoration. I threw the wood piece in a little container of Danish oil and just polished it up so that it had a nice natural shiny look. And here you can see it's finished wood piece. Now I just slipped this leather piece in and lined up my hole. And there I'm just adding a little bit of super glue to glue that in. And pop your bottom of your post through, and then you can thread the top in. And since the post was longer, I'm just gonna file that down. And then once it's smooth and flush, I'm gonna take a punch and I'm just gonna rivet it in, mushroom over that top and smooth it out so that it doesn't unthread itself. And then just with some 2000 grit sandpaper, I polished up that screw where I sanded it, and pretty much there's your finished lanyard. This gives you all kinds of opportunities. You don't have to follow this design exactly, but you get the idea. You can use different leather, different wood, lengths, shapes, snaps, no snaps, split ring or not, and you just get your imagination going, do what you want, and hopefully you come up with something you like, and hopefully you enjoyed this project. Get out there and make one. Feel free to leave a comment if you have any questions. Don't forget to like it and share it with your friends if you enjoyed this video. And of course, subscribe to the channel if you want to see more. And I look forward to seeing you guys on the next project.